Picture this, you're reading a book, but instead of finishing each chapter, you keep flipping ahead and trying to understand stuff that's way ahead of where you are and therefore never fully absorb what's right in front of you. Sounds chaotic, doesn't it? Yet this is exactly how most intermediate guitarists approach their musical journey. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to attend a masterclass with Eduardo Danui, one of Brazil's most respected guitarists and widely recognized as the best hard rock guitarist in Brazil. And I'll be talking today about one of the key points that he addressed in an analogy he made that has stuck with me ever since, and I always pass on and encourage people to follow. If this is your first time here, I'm Stip. I'm a Brazilian guitarist in Australia. 9 years into my guitar journey, I went from self-taught to graduating from an international music academy, learned from a few legends along the way, and I help intermediate guitarists level up and save time. It's no surprise that we live in an era of information overload, right? If you open YouTube, there will be tutorials showing you advanced jazz fusion licks. If you open Instagram or TikTok, you might see people talking about some really cool specific modern techniques or ideas or tricks, and this digital feast basically ends up making us lose something extremely important and basic, which is the ability to complete one thing before starting another. And not only the completion itself, but the sense of following a proper order of learning. If you're an intermediate guitarist and you use any kind of online resource to learn new stuff and get better, think about it. Maybe you've dabbled on pentatonics for a week, then jumped to modes, then try to tackle seventh arpeggios, all without truly internalizing the simpler foundational concepts. It is definitely not rare that someone could be practicing a lick using a melodic minor mode without being fluent with the major triads, for example. It's like trying to build a skyscraper without a floor. And this shiny object syndrome is one of the main issues of the modern guitarist, that urge to chase the next flashy technique, the next impressive scale, the next mind-blowing concept, while leaving a trail of half-learned fundamentals along the way. And I can tell you that this is a truly guaranteed recipe for long-term frustration and stagnation. When I teach private lessons, whether online or in person, my number one type of student is usually someone who's overloaded with content but needs guidance, organization, and a method. And also, this is precisely who I was in my initial years being self-taught. So when I went to Eduardo Danui's guitar clinic, which was a very interesting experience, by the way, because I went with my guitar teacher at the time, Bruno, so it was kind of a field trip thing. We left the music school, went to watch a legend, and then took notes and then had discussions about it. That was amazing. Thank you very much, Bruno, if you're watching. I'll never forget that day. So the main thing that struck me was that I was, of course, expecting all the hard rock and metal side of things, so all the powerful and technical language he's well known for, so using fast string skipping, two hands arpeggios and runs. But what caught me totally off guard was that I didn't know how he had also truly mastered the more niche specific things, like tools typically used in jazz or fusion, like the melodic minor modes, the diminished dominant scale, the whole tone scale, and stuff in that line. And it's not like I didn't expect him to know it. Of course, he's a legendary guitarist and he's also a teacher, so it's not that, but it was the fluency and also how he completely owned those elements. He could play these things as naturally as he could play pentatonics. And during the clinic, he started taking questions and going through all kinds of subjects, and he casually mentioned some of those things and did some very effortless, complex demonstrations on the spot that I was definitely not expecting. He switched from his well-established hard rock and metal shredder style of playing to a jazz fusion genius, and this amount of fluency and proficiency is really not common. There was some serious demonstration of knowledge. And so as the questions continued coming, a guy who was next to me got the microphone, and he didn't really ask a specific question. He actually kind of vented after watching all of that, and it was basically something along the lines of, I'm feeling very lost, everything seems so difficult, how the hell am I supposed to deal with that entire universe of things there are to be learned? I really wish to one day achieve your lesson, and I'm willing to do what it takes, but I just can't see what are the actionable steps in that direction. And it was funny because when he asked this, the whole room kind of had an atmosphere of, thank you so much for asking this because I'm feeling the same way. And then Edu proceeded to answer, and he said this quote that to this day I constantly think about, which is, never flip a page before you finish writing it. In the sense that if you are practicing a certain subject, let's say the pentatonic scale, don't move on to a more complex subject like the harmonic minor scale, for example, before you explore all the nuances of the pentatonic scale, like being able to improvise comfortably and musically using nothing but the scale, using it to play songs, having it well mapped in every key in every region of the fretboard, applying all kinds of techniques to it, understanding very well what are the intervals that make up the scale, how they sound and where they are, and so on. The same thing applies to learning songs, solos, and ideas, where people learn songs halfway through and then move on to something else, or in the case of a lick or solo, if we're talking about using that as a way of developing your vocabulary, your repertoire of melodic ideas, those applications won't stick and become part of how you play if you don't spend some significant time understanding each detail, trying variations and approaching it from different angles. And that's all very fun to do. It's a shame because I don't think most people understand how fun that the whole process of getting one thing and working it out really is. I think most people end up chasing other shiny objects because they can't see by themselves how shiny that current thing really is, or how could you make it even shinier. And an interesting thing about this that many people don't realize is that unless we're talking about specific, more complex genres like jazz and fusion, the vast majority of what you listen to, most of what you enjoy and admire in music, so basically as a guitarist, anything in blues, rock, pop, hard rock, metal, country, funk, punk, soul, whatever, comes from a little package of three things that are often massively overlooked and not given their true significance. This is something I'll expand on and talk more specifically about in another video, so make sure you're subscribed to this channel so you don't miss it, and also to get all my other tips, insights, and free lessons as well. So if you're an intermediate guitarist, someone who's been playing and learning for a while, and we consider pentatonics in the same example, there might be a good chance that this is a concept you definitely know about, but there's also a good chance that because of that information overload I mentioned at the beginning, you might have flipped a few pages and written some unfinished paragraphs, and that's totally okay. Everyone goes through that at some point. Being curious is natural, but we must be aware of that so we don't fall for this trap and end up getting lost and spending time and not really getting anywhere. And so the most important thing I want to pass on about this is how important it is to learn to calm down, not get distracted or feel threatened or suffocated by everything that exists out there, and really spend enough time on each subject before moving ahead. As a personal example, because I went to a music school and there was a curriculum to be accomplished within a certain time, we naturally couldn't exhaust each subject before moving on. So within those 3 years there, we'd spend a few weeks or months covering each subject. Our head teacher even told us, he graduated from Berkeley in the United States, which might have taken somewhere around 4 years, I think. And after he left, he told us it basically took him 10 years to process everything he'd been exposed to. So during my journey over there were some things that I learned at surface level enough to follow along with the classes, but that still have had no impact at all in my playing because I still haven't really worked them out. And the fact that I understand this central idea of this video that I'm talking about makes me feel totally okay about it, because I know what I'm currently doing, it's what's truly important at the moment, and that everything else will have its time at some point. So after graduating, I went back to the first textbook, to the first page, and I have been going through that process of really maturing each of the subjects in a chronological order for almost 3 years now, and I'm having so much fun. So yeah, if that whole pages idea resonated with you, that's actually the core of how I teach inside my course. Everything's laid down in the right order, step by step, so you're never left wondering what to work on next. And if you ever feel stuck or confused, you can reach out and I'll personally help you. So if that sounds like what you've been needing, the link is in the description and in the fixed comment below. And if you join now, you'll get a personalized study plan tailored to your life, to where you're at in your journey and how much weekly time you have to practice. So I'll be waiting for you over there, and until the next video.